to get us rolling here, what are some of the big takeaways from some of the surveying that your organization does of business owners in Washington?
So we do a quarterly survey. It goes out to close to 20,000 employers across the state. So we get back that information every quarter, so then we can compare trends. We're looking at trends within the employer community. Our most recent survey came back, we had some improvements and some caution, so a little bit of both. On the improvement side, we asked the question, do you see your business growing in the next 6 months? Well, we got about 50%, a little over 50% saying, yeah, we see that my own individual business has that opportunity to grow. That's a little above where it was previously. It was about 46% previously, so that's moving up. So we see that as a real positive sign. The concern about recession, right? We've had these fears about recession. They've been for quite some time now, and that fear is receding. Only about 18% of our surveyed folks are saying, yeah, we see a recession coming in the next year. That's down from 35%. So again, those are some real positive signs that I think are important for people to see. On the other hand, though, we also have some caution. A full third of our respondents said that their cost of doing business, just the cost of doing business, whether it's taxes, regulation, and of course inflation, has gone up about 20 to 30%. So that's a third of them have seen a 20 to 30% increase just to open their doors day in and day out. That clearly is a concern, particularly as we move into the next legislative session. That's definitely a concern and a point of caution that we also want people to be aware of.
On that note, the state is facing a projected $10 to $12 billion budget deficit, and there has been a lot of speculation that the legislature will explore new tax revenue options in 2025. A wealth tax is one potential option that was discussed, or they came up in an interview. From your perspective, what are the business ramifications of the tax-related decisions made next year?
Well, Mike, I'm going to back it up just a little bit because we just went through, and COVID, we're past that COVID period now, but the COVID period, what we saw at the state, we saw it across the country. Massive amounts of funding coming from the federal government. Billions and billions and billions of dollars coming to each state. Now, every state did it a little differently. Some states literally did some tax reductions during that time. Our state did not. Our state took that money and essentially spent all the money that came in. We still have a little bit, but I think that's on its way out right now. And this was one-time funding. So this is not an ongoing funding. It was for a certain period of time, for certain purposes. And what we've seen is in our state, unfortunately, what we see the policy, the budgets were using some of this one-time funding and turning it into ongoing programs, expanding existing programs, starting new programs with one-time funding. So when we talk about a budget deficit right now, or we have more spending than we have revenue right now, how did it happen? Well, it happened 2 years ago when the legislature had a budget in front of them and they spent more money than they had revenue coming in for. So they had a savings account, they spent it all, and they did it on ongoing programs. So it is absolutely no surprise to any of us who are paying attention to these kind of budget things that we now have a challenge. I'm going to add to that a little bit because what you see every year in and year out, the legislature comes in and they do a biennial budget, a budget for 2 years. Pretty much consistently, the new legislature that comes in after an election cycle has about $7 billion in new spending that the previous legislature added to the budget. So they walk in with about $7 billion. This year, the legislature is walking in with a $14 billion expansion of spending. So they literally, what would normally happen every 2-year period, it goes up $7 billion. In the last 2 years, it went up $14 billion. It's almost 4 years worth of spending in one budget year. So is it a surprise that we have some trouble right now, even though our revenue continues to grow? Is it a surprise that the legislature has put us in a position where the budget is spending more than the money coming in? No, it's a math problem, and the math problem is you can't continue to spend more than you have revenue and have that be a sustainable circumstance. So now this is where we are as a state.
You can watch the rest of the interview by clicking the link below and check out the Impact Archive for more in-depth interviews you won't find anywhere else.